AIDS, HIV. Even though a positive test can be a life-altering event, with the advancement in modern medicine, it could be treated with medication and a healthy lifestyle, and one could be expected to have a long life expectancy. But this was not always the case. No one really knows how HIV/AIDS came to be, where it came from. There is no true known source of whom was patient zero. The first news story on the disease appeared on May 18, 1981 in the gay newspaper New York Native. AIDS was first clinically reported on June 5, 1981 with 5 cases in the United States. The initial cases were a cluster of injecting drug users and gay men with no known cause of impaired immunity who showed symptoms of pneumocystis carolinii pneumonia, PCP for short, a rare opportunistic infection that was known to occur in people with very compromised immune systems. Soon thereafter, an unexpected number of homosexual men developed a previously rare skin cancer called Kaposi sarcoma. Many more cases of PCP and KS emerged, alerting U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and a CDC task force was formed to monitor the outbreak. In the early days, the CDC did not have an official name for the disease, often referring to it by way of diseases associated with it, such as lymphadenopathy, the disease after which the discoverers of HIV originally named the virus. They also used Kaposi sarcoma and opportunistic infections, the name by which a task force had been set up in 1981. At one point, the CDC referred to it as the 4-H disease, as the syndrome seemed to affect heroin users, homosexuals, hemophiliacs, and Haitians. The term GRID, which stood for Gay-Related Immune Deficiency, had also been coined. However, after determining that AIDS was not isolated to the gay community, it was realized that the term GRID was misleading, and the term AIDS was introduced at a meeting in July 1982. By September 1982, the CDC started referring to the disease as AIDS. In the early part of 1968, a 15-year-old kid named Robert Rayford admitted himself to the city hospital in St. Louis. He was complaining of shortness of breath. During a physical examination, the doctor who was treating Robert also noted that his legs and genitals were covered with warts and sores, had severe swelling in his testicles and pelvic region, and that he was very thin and pale. Rayford told the doctor he had been experiencing these symptoms since 1966. Tests also confirmed a very severe case of chlamydia, which had unusually spread throughout his body. Rayford declined a rectal examination request by hospital personnel and was described as uncommunicative and withdrawn. When questioned about his sexual history, he would contradict his statements, at first claiming he was a, quote, stud and a ladies' man, but then later claiming he had only been with one sex partner, a teenage girl who he had suspected had given him the disease. Doctors treating Rayford had suspected him of being an underage sex worker and having been the recipient of receptive anal sex, but never considered the possibility of him being the victim of child molestation. Later on in 1968, Rayford's condition seemed to have improved, but by March of 1969, his symptoms reappeared and they worsened. He had increased difficulty breathing and his white blood cell count had plummeted. Having developed a fever and pneumonia, doctors conversed with one another and all stated that seamlessly his immune system had been somehow compromised and it appeared as though it had completely shut down. At 11:20 p.m. May 15, 1969, Robert Rayford died of pneumonia. An autopsy of Rayford's body, which was led by William Drake, uncovered several abnormalities. Small purplish lesions were discovered on Rayford's left thigh along with soft tissue. The time Drake concluded that the lesions were Kaposi sarcoma, a rare type of cancer which mostly affected elderly men of Mediterranean or Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry, but was almost unheard of amongst black teenagers. A sample of Rayford's blood and tissue was kept in storage for later testing. In 1984, Dr. Marlise Witt, one of the doctors who cared for Robert Rayford, thawed and tested tissue samples that were preserved from Rayford's autopsy for the presence of HIV/AIDS, but the test came back negative. In June of 1987, Dr. Witt again decided to test tissue samples, this time using Western blot, at the time being the most sensitive test available. The test found HIV detectable proteins in his blood and HIV antigens in his tissue samples. In 1999, a report detailing the findings of Rayford's testing was made public, even though some in the scientific medical community say that contamination of the test could be possible. Doctors are no longer able to test any blood or tissue samples from Robert Rayford. The last known samples were destroyed in a lab in 2005 during Hurricane Katrina. This is the Washington Park Cemetery here in St. Louis. We're right next to the airport here. So I was here yesterday looking for Mr. Rayford's grave. I searched high, I searched low, I walked in 95-degree, 90% humidity heat for 2.5 hours, and I did not find him. Today, I've been walking around for about an hour and a half, just going back over where I've gone back over before, and still, I was unable to find him. Normally, when I do these videos, I do like to show a grave or at least a location of where the person or the subject that I'm speaking about is interred or is buried. Now, on his death certificate, it does say that he is buried in the cemetery, and yesterday I did run into the caretaker, and as you can see, the cemetery is, well, they do the best they can. This is not a perpetual care cemetery. Basically, the only funds they get to take care of the cemetery is from new burials, and there's not many new burials that I've actually seen whatsoever. And I have not seen a single Rayford grave. Now, I do know that one does exist because he showed me a book with several different Rayfords that are interred here. However, I did not see one, and Robert Rayford's name wasn't in the list of names of people that are buried in this cemetery. However, like I said, I showed you the death certificate, and it clearly states that this is going to be a place where he is going to be interred. So with that being said, somewhere in this cemetery lies the remains of Robert Rayford, the first diagnosed case of HIV/AIDS. And if you want to look up reports online, this kid might have lived a hellish existence. With that being said, live but not live, still alive. By the grace of God, I'm Lamont at large. Thank you for watching my video. I will catch up with you on the next vlog. Peace out.